皆様お待たせいたしました。次のセッションは機関投資家グレードのデジタル資産レールの構築、コンプライアンスセキュリティを重視したインフラ開発をお届けします。Thank you all for waiting. Our next session is titled Building Institutional Grade Digital Asset Rails. 早速皆様をご紹介いたしましょう。Our guest panelists are Gehrke Looi from Saison Capital, Betty Sun Lucas from Stellar Development Foundation, and Matt Harrop from Figment. Our moderator is Norbert Gehrke from Tokyo FinTech Association. 皆様拍手でお迎えください。Please come to the stage.
Great, good morning, Tokyo. We're talking about institutional rails, and we have quite some variety on the panel here. We've got investor, we've got a protocol, and we've got staking. So I think we'll have a great benefit of looking at this from multiple different angles. So we're starting with the protocol. Betty, there's so many new L1s coming out now. So Circle wants to build one, Stripe wants to build one, and Stellar is the dino in the room, right? Stellar is the dino, not you. Yeah. And so, been around for 10 plus years. And the natural question is, with all the new stuff coming up, everybody wants to do the new things. Is Stellar still relevant?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for asking, Norbert. And I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Maybe just a little bit about Stellar first. So Stellar is an open source layer 1 protocol built for empowering everyday financial services for everyday people. So just now you mentioned a very good question, like Circle, Stripe, everybody is in the market is trying to build their next shining thing, which is a layer 1 protocol. But to build something really secure, interoperable, and compliance is really hard, and Stellar has been doing that for the past 10 years. And we've been trusted and empowered by many trusted and compliant financial institutions like Franklin Templeton, Wisdom Tree, PayPal, Circle, and many more. So, I mean, while everybody else is still announcing their blueprint or white papers, we've already been doing it.
Steady presence over the years. Matt, we had a chance to talk on Friday in Osaka already, and it was very interesting to hear about your entrepreneurial journeys. Figment is now your 4th startup, and tell us a bit about how you arrived at doing a staking venture, and maybe also for the benefit of the audience, briefly explain what staking is in the first place, please.
Sure, thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. So yes, this is my 4th startup company. I started with a dial-up ISP in the late 90s, so I'm putting an age to myself there. What really brought myself and my co-founders to staking is that the blockchain space, really about 8 years ago when we got into it, really felt to us a lot like the internet felt in the late 90s, where there was clearly something happening. There was lots of really interesting technology. People weren't sure what it was going to be used for, but we were sure it was going to be used for big things. And it seemed like the place to be. Very, very similar vibe. And to this date, it still feels like that. So staking is the process of locking up your token. In this case, in many cases, we're talking about ETH, which is the largest asset that is stakeable today. Locking up tokens to allow token holders to take the place of miners, essentially, to secure and operate the blockchain networks they are on. Figment is the largest institutional staking provider in the world. We have about 160 employees globally, including 2 full-time employees here in Japan. We secure about $20 billion worth of assets under stake right now. And we service global financial institutions, approximately 1,000 customers all over the world.
Just a quick follow-up. So you mentioned 160 institutional clients. Can you name some so that we know kind of where they are and what they do, who actually is engaged in this business at the moment?
Sure. So they span the gamut from asset managers, venture capital, traditional providers, traditional banks, and institutions of that nature. I have to be a little careful of exactly who to mention. I should have brought a list of who are allowed to speak about publicly. But we are powering 7 of the ETF providers in the United States, Canada, and Europe. That does include, for example, 3iQ, which is a Canadian ETF provider, and several others.
Got it, thank you. So coming to the investment side, and Chinyan, you are the Swiss Army knife in everything FinTech, blockchain, etc. So it's always hard to find a starting point to unravel everything. So you do obviously the investing for Saison Capital, also being super active running your own conference alongside Money 2020 in Bangkok. So just tell us a bit about yourself and your approach to this space, because, and when you're actually sleeping.
Thanks a lot, Norbert. I think for us, so I'm Chinan. I'm a partner at Saison Capital. We are the corporate venture capital arm of Credit Saison, which in Japan is the second largest credit card company. While it is relatively late in sort of the blockchain space, in 2022, we were one of the earlier Asian financial institutions to start investing. And notably, we were able to hold tokens on our balance sheet, which is even till today, quite challenging for most financial institutions, especially in Asia. So we started by investing in these blockchain companies, both equity and token. But I think very quickly what it became apparent to us is that the space was still very early, right? And a lot of it had to be hand-holding our partners, who were other financial institutions across Asia, on how to embark on this journey, how to understand what blockchain is, how does staking work. So there were many of these conversations that we had in private, to the point that we felt like we were repeating the same things over and over again. So we thought, what better way than to put it into platforms? And when I talk about platforms, it includes things like written reports, which we publish, and also through conferences, right? I think one thing that we observe is that often many of these asset managers, insurers, banks, they are afraid to go to crypto events. At least this was a couple of years ago, because firstly, it's not really the same audience as them, and secondly, when everyone is talking about, you know, the latest and greatest, they are just there to understand, how do I start, right? How do I do things in a compliant way? So we created this event platform called On-Chain to really provide a safe space. But really, all of this just goes back to, we need to advance this ecosystem, this space together, and we can't just do it by ourselves.
A lot of education still required, so we are still early. Good. Now that we have set the foundation, Betty, let's dive into Stellar. Give us a few real-world use cases. What actually runs on Stellar from a financial perspective?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because different protocols are built for specific purposes, and for Stellar, we very much focus on real-world use cases, like what I mentioned, to empower everyday financial services for everyday people. So what do we mean by that is, for example, we work with Franklin Templeton, and their very first US-registered money market fund was on Stellar. So to bring those capital market fund on Stellar and to empower the daily users to subscribe to money market fund, which gives you like 3.7% day-to-day yield, and with only $20 minimum subscription, is something that we really care about, because traditionally for those money market funds, in US, the minimum subscription is $3,000 but in Singapore, for example, the minimum is $20,000 to start with. So traditionally, those capital market fund is not very widely accessible, but through Stellar, we work closely with the TradFi leaders in the world to support them to bring the compliance real-world financial assets on-chain. So that's one of the examples. the other one I really wanted to mention is our partnership with MoneyGram. So MoneyGram is one of the world's largest money changers globally, and partnering with Stellar empowers us to have Stellar networks to have the on-ramp, off-ramp capabilities with MoneyGram, where the wallet holders will be able to get their crypto to cash or cash to crypto conversions across 170 countries and 400 over 1,000 places globally. Basically, it means that the domestic helpers in Singapore, if he wants to transfer some money weekly basis to his family in the Philippines, he could just go to MoneyGram and say, hey, I wanted to transfer this money, go to MoneyGram in Singapore and put in the cash, and that convert into cryptos. And in the Philippines, they will be able to, the families will be able to go to money market to draw the Philippine pesos straight away with very minimum cost, which cut traditionally money changers transfer fees as well as exchanger fees in total. Yeah.
So we should call it by its name. The Benji is the money market fund, right? It's just a great name from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had Franklin Templeton on the panel of his crypto ETFs on Friday, and I was not allowed to talk about Benjis because they are not ETFs, they are tokenized money market funds. So I'm glad we could cover it here. So Matt, also from an institutional perspective, not every staking provider is the same. So you're doing specific things that makes institutions more comfortable. What exactly are you doing?
Sure. So Figment has been built from day one to service the most risk-averse financial institutions. And bringing that type of company on chain is a big challenge. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work to build those relationships and to get those financial institutions comfortable that they'll be safe. So we've started with a safety, security, and compliance first approach. The most important thing for most financial institutions is to make sure they understand all of the risks that they are taking when they bring their assets on chain, in particular when they start doing something that is new to them like staking. And they need to make sure that they are in compliance with all of the regulations that are potentially applicable, and generally they want to go above and beyond those regulations. Financial institutions have not just regulatory requirements, but they often have internal compliance requirements. They go much far beyond the regulations. They have ethical requirements, et cetera. So one example of that is that we've led our space with an OFAC compliant approach to block building. So on Ethereum, the United States government publishes a list of addresses that are sanctioned. And it's important to our customers to make sure they are never in violation of those regulations. Now, if you're not an American-based company, that may not strictly be a legal requirement, but the vast bulk of our clients feel that it is, as an example, and is where they want to go above and beyond. So that's the type of approach that we've taken from day one.
Can we geek out a bit on at the technical level? What does it mean? Right, there's maximum extractable value. How do you actually handle that? And with also the restrictions that you put on yourself, what percentage, let's say, of the staking power providers is inaccessible for you?
Sure. So the MEV is basically the process of separating transaction selection, separating block building from the actual validator, who then puts together the block and publishes it, proposes it on the chain. In the pre-proof of stake days with Ethereum, individual miners, mining pools held huge chunks of the market share. So you had single mining pools holding 30–40% of all block building. So they introduced MEV as a way really to maximize the value they were able to extract. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, whether it can be simple, basically like there's sort of like white hat sort of behaviors that really just lead to more efficiency and lower fees. And examples of this are like arbitrage between dexes, which helps ensure that the price of a given asset ends up tracking across different dexes. And then there are more black hat approaches that are like sandwich attacks that try to really like extract value from others' trades, which into questionable legalities, certainly questionable ethics. So we've chosen to work only with ethical and legally compliant block, gateways and block builders. There is a very, very small trade-off. We think we've gotten around the vast majority of that trade-off between performance and compliance. Our customers all want to be more sure about their compliance, but everybody at the end of the day cares about that headline rate. Everyone wants to make as much money as they can make. So at times we're probably losing a couple of basis points, but that's a trade-off we will make every day of the week.
Got it, thank you. So Shinan, much of the conference, naturally, we're in Japan, we have a very developed financial infrastructure here. The reports that you mentioned earlier, you've got one on Malaysia, you've got one on Indonesia, it's a totally different story. And so pick either market if you like, and what does it mean to do all these Web3 things, blockchain things in a market like that, and what is the investment opportunity for you?
I think what's very interesting is in the past 8 months, what we have seen across many markets, especially across Asia, it's a very top-down driven approach where, for example, in Malaysia, the Prime Minister himself has declared ambitions to make Malaysia a blockchain hub. And because of that mandate, both the regulators and the financial institutions are waking up and they are realizing, okay, we need to stop talking about it, we need to start doing it, right? And then when it comes to how do we do it, that's really the perennial question. And I think that's sort of where all of us have a critical role to play. And I think for us as investors, even though we are not the builders, people like Figment, people like Stellar, we can bring all of them together, right? So in the case of Malaysia, what has happened is we have partnered up with the #1 independent investment bank and asset manager. It's called Kenanga. And essentially what we have done is we have put together, the report is more than just like a piece of paper that no one reads, right? It's more important that we put together our thoughts on what it should be, what regulations should look like, and we took that to the regulator to discuss with them, right? Because we are at a stage where it's hard for regulators to set very clear rules, especially in a space that goes so fast. So our approach is to be proactive, right? Instead of launching something and waiting for the regulator to say yes or no, we are proactively taking it to them to say, this is how we think what good compliance, what good risk management looks like. And this is not done in silos. It's not just done by us, not just done by Kenanga, but we bring in partners like Stellar, like some of our startups to really all join in these conversations. So I think this year and next year, it's going to be at a very interesting phase, right? Where it's almost collectively us as a group, everyone in this room has the chance to shape what that future looks like, especially from a regulated, from a compliant front. And I think while many things might not be in place yet, might not be extremely black and white, I think to me that's the opportunity and that's what's exciting, right? Because once everything is black and white, then the rules of the game are set, but now is the chance to define the rules of the game.
Staying with what you said, even if it's not black and white, you've got lighter gray and darker gray, and so you also create investability, so you can have some probability that you're legally investing in the lighter gray stuff.
Definitely. What I like to say is 15 years ago when FinTech first came out, every FinTech would talk to the bank and say, get lost, right? I don't want to be like you. I'm different. I'm going to move faster. But if you look at what has happened today, more fintechs are becoming like banks. They're buying banks. They're getting bank licenses. And almost every bank has a fintech component to it. So what we see is this sort of confluence and this merging. And I strongly believe that's what we're going to experience in the blockchain space, right? When, of course, at the start, we talk about decentralization. We talk about, anti-government, anti-central party. But very quickly, what we're seeing is it's becoming a lot more integrated. And I think that's key for us to move forward, right? Because at the end of the day, trust cannot be bootstrapped. I think that's something that my co-panelists, Figment, Stellar, have built very well, right? It's done over many years. It's the kind of thing that you can't just be an upstart, And so what if you raise a lot of money, but at the end of the day, trust cannot be bootstrapped. It needs to come with legacy. It needs to come with reputation. It takes time to build, right? And I think that building starts now.
Wonderful. So in order to get started and get off zero, again, you have the benefit, Betty, with Stella. You've got a 10+ year track record. You have built the trust globally. If there were Japanese corporates in the room who wanted to start building on Stellar, how do they approach that?
Yep. I've been asked a lot about that question because often people feels like all of those protocols were in the air. They never be able to touch and reach them. They can only go on the website. But that's the beauty also is the open source platform where basically everything that you need is on the portal. So if you would like to experiment and explore collaborations on Stellar Network, you could just go on our website and click the link called Learn. And there are so many things out there in the libraries from our SDKs to different kind of APIs and even learning process on different kind of terms that's specific to Stellar. You'll be able to have a complete guidelines in terms of how to start with Stellar. And more importantly, that we are very much cared about our communities and networks. So Stellar is not just far out there. What we are trying to do is to provide our builders the connections, the network where if you are building on Stellar, please feel free to reach out to us. We can help you to build the use case and help you to connect you with our partners, anchors, on-ramp, off-ramp partners, and even the financial institutions like MoneyGrams or Franklin Templeton if you are building things on top of their money market fund. And second thing is that we understand a lot of companies start from bootstrap, so we also wanted to support in terms of the grants and investments. So we have, for example, like community grant where you will be able to have apply up to $150,000 startup grant. And when the companies, when you build your protocol, when you build your POC and the communities find it is useful and you have your real use case, you can then apply for like market grant where we will help you to marketing more widely. And when you become more matured and ready to raise your capitals, we have this Stellar Enterprise Fund where it comes in as a VC investment as well. So there's a whole different kind of touch points that we could support the community to grow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so similar, Matt, the Japanese market can be hard to penetrate at times, and so you made, as Figment, made a decision to commit to this market. You created an entity, you hired people locally, you've got boots on the ground. What's coming next for Japan, in your perspective?
Sure. So we've been committed to the Japanese market for quite a long time now. We've had Japanese customers for many years. We've operated validators in Japanese facilities for many years. And just more recently this year, we hired staff for the first time here and started, physically coming to have a physical presence here as well. We think that our approach that we've taken with institutional customers around the world has made us really well suited to serve the Japanese institutional market. And while this market, I don't think is actually uniquely difficult to penetrate. It's sort of, we often get told, we hear that Japanese institutions are very slow moving and you have to be prepared for that. But we work with global financial institutions. We work with American financial institutions. We are very accustomed to multi-year relationship building, multi-year sales cycles. We built the company to provide staking to institutional, to financial institutions. We started 8 years ago. The first ETFs with staking have started to launch this year. A little bit last year, but really this year. And the American ETFs, which is going to be the is going to be the global leader from an asset perspective, is just getting started now with regulatory clarity arriving in the US over the last couple of months. So we're really no stranger to that sort of like very long relationship building cycle. We think it's extraordinarily important to be committed to a market, and that means that, you know, we're going to be here through the ups and the downswings. I mean, everyone on this stage has been in crypto for long enough to have had the euphoric highs and then the crypto winters. And I think what sets companies like these companies apart is that we, you know, we sort of go head down and build through those downswings, and then, you know, we're here to build in the upswings.
I think it's actually a very good point. So in a prior life, I was sitting on the new products committee for top 10 bank. And so it's not like anybody in the organization can go out and say like, oh, we're staking now. There is quite a lengthy process there. You need to get everybody comfortable that the right controls are in place, regulations are tier 2, etc. So it's not like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs are that fast in the end.
That's true, and you know, Japanese companies are also very aggressive and very forward-thinking. So, you know, we have, I guess, an anchor partner here. We work with NTT, and you know, that relationship took a lot of nurturing and a lot of work on their side to get comfortable with us, and on our side to, you know, prove that we could be comfortable, that, you know, that we could get them comfortable, and that has been very fruitful for both of us. We just I sat on a panel with them a couple days ago. So that's been a great learning experience for us, and it's a perfect example of just the time and commitment that it takes to build those relationships.
Wonderful. Jinan, you don't obviously have any problem accessing the Japanese market. Your mothership is here. So let's talk a bit maybe about the convergence. So with Benji's, right, also we have essentially an old product. We put it onto new rails, but then we also got the old rails and put in a new product. So that's the crypto ETFs, right? And so you get a composability that maybe nobody envisioned in this way. And at some point, these two things need to come together. And how do you see that path evolving? And it might well be different for advanced countries with an existing financial system versus kind of the markets that we talked about earlier.
I think it's fascinating, but I think also what is important is that a lot of attention is often placed on the headlines, right? Of, hey, we tokenize a financial product. But I think what many institutions are quietly experimenting and already seeing benefits, it's really actually on the back office side of things. We're talking about things like reconciliation, things like settlement, things that, you know, as a retail customer or even as an SME customer, you don't look at it, you don't care about it, you don't want to deal with it, right? And I think that's where we see a lot of the benefits of blockchain already coming in, and where we can bring parts of the technology, perhaps not replace the entire thing, but parts of it can really accelerate, and we can really reduce costs on that. And I think that to us is what's exciting, because of course everyone loves the vision of financial inclusion, access, you know, a tokenized private equity fund in everyone's pockets. But I do think we are still quite some distance from there, because fundamentally tokenizing does not change the financial asset, right? Blockchain does not change the financial asset. So what we really have to do is to figure out where does it make sense for institutions to apply this. And I think where we're finding the answers is a lot more on what are the things unseen rather than the things that are seen. And I think that's really the beauty of it, right? When cloud computing really took off, to be honest, to you and I, we didn't notice the difference, right? We continue to access our apps the way we do. But of course, on the back end, in terms of how these things scale, how much these things cost, that changed radically. So I think that's really the vision I have, right? Today, we're talking a lot about which blockchain you're building on, but to most of the people there, all they want is for it to work.
Yeah, so the only battle we have is, are you running Android or you have an iPhone? And so if we get anywhere near that from a blockchain perspective, that people talk about, let's say, two big families, then we're kind of at the end game, right? So, but that is a long way to go. So let's just think about what do you want to leave the audience with here. It's like final thoughts and maybe a call to action. What whatever you would like. And I confuse you now. We're going different order. Let's just go from right to left from the audience side. Matt, if you don't mind going first.
Sure. I think the most exciting thing in Japan right now is that regulatory clarity will be arriving. I think that the timelines are now sort of fairly visible. And in every country around the world, there's a trend towards regulatory clarity. And I think what our industry needs the most, that's exactly what our industry needs. We all want to be compliant. We all want to do things the right way. And in order to do that, we need to know what the right way is, and we need to work with governments to do that. We see that coming here now. Once that regulatory clarity arrives, I think that unlocks a great deal of activity. And we're going to essentially, from Figment's perspective, wherever there are tokens, there will be staking, and Figment will be there.
Let me just challenge that a bit from the US perspective, not necessarily from the Canadian perspective, but in the 4 years that were the crypto winter, there had been quite a few calls for a self-regulatory organization in the crypto world. And eventually the industry has said, yeah, we should do this, but nobody stepped up and did it. So, right, the sound bites of saying we want regulation, kind of the action speaks a bit differently than kind of the voice.
Sure. In the United States, I think for the last 4 years, there had been a general sense of the best thing that the large companies could do was keep our heads down. And so there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes. It may not have been particularly visible, but all of the large companies have been having conversations with legislators, with regulators. We have been doing that. And what needed to happen was for the people at those regulatory agencies and for the lawmakers to essentially to come around. So my view is that there's really no constituency that doesn't want our businesses to be able to build the things that we want to build. There's a great deal of constituency for making sure that we're doing it the right way and that people are protected, companies are protected, consumers are protected. But yeah, I think basically there was a bit of go head down. There's the unfriendly regulators, and the best thing we can do is try not to get noticed too much by them. And now there's a new set of regulators, and we've had not just new regulations in the United States, but actual legislation that has been passed, which it's impossible to predict the future, but it feels to us to be much more durable because there is actual legislation that has set up these new regulatory frameworks.
Totally fair, and you had to get rid of Gary Gensler, right, who spent a significant part of his career in Tokyo. So I think everybody here was happy when he left stateside again.
I'm gonna not comment.
Betty, your final thoughts, please.
Thanks very much. It's really great to be in this panel to basically share what Stella does and our case studies and what we can do together. I think just to carry on a little bit in terms of the policies, Stella works very closely with the policies and regulators globally, and especially in APAC, we work with, for example, like MAS, Hong Kong MAs, and OJKs in Indonesia, for example, really closely to basically share the success stories, share what we've learned globally, not only just in the US, in Europe, and in the other developing market like in Latin and Africa, and to basically support in terms of the decision makings and share different kind of use cases for Stella. And for the audience, I mean, if you're interested in experiment, especially if you're focusing on cross-border payments and RWA tokenization, Stellar is basically one of the leading chains supporting those, and we have the world's largest on-ramp, off-ramp capabilities with MoneyGram, for example. So if you are interested, I mean, after this, feel free to come over and talk with me, and I'll be more than happy to work with you to support you on your use case and your journeys ahead. Thank you.
So what do we need to do to get on-chain in Tokyo?
I'm going to address this to, I guess, the builders and founders in the room, right? Which is to be bold and think big. I think we are really at this golden moment where the next 1 to 2 years is the prime time to build, to push the frontiers, the boundaries of what's possible. and to not just think about building a business for Japan, but really from Japan to the rest of the world, right? I think Japan carries a lot of credibility, a lot of respect, not just in Asia, but everywhere. That's why this conference is so successful, right? It's not just all Japanese here, it's really people from all around the world. So clearly the world cares about Japan and wants to see what can come out from it from the blockchain space. So I think for the founders and builders here, be bold, be brave, but of course, do it in compliance with regulation.
Perfect ending, I think, for the panel. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the panelists, please.
Thank you very much.
Enthusiasm, thank you.
皆様どうもありがとうございました。Could I please ask our speakers to come to the center of the stage? We'll have an official photograph.ありがとうございました。改めて大きな拍手で皆様をお送りください。